my paranormal childhood experience. The girl in the backyard. If you ever think you're being watched through your bedroom window, do yourself a favor. Don't check. I used to tell myself that was just anxiety, an overactive imagination, a leftover childhood fear I never shook. I don't think that anymore. Not since the day I got a Polaroid picture in the mail of a house that no longer exists, with a girl standing in the ashes, pointing straight at the camera, pointing at me. To understand why that picture terrifies me more than anything on this planet, I have to go back to a house my mother told me never to return to, and a backyard where I first learned what it feels like to be chosen. I was 9 when we moved in. On paper, the house was perfect. 3 bedrooms, 1.5 baths, a big kitchen, a finished basement, and the kind of deep backyard real estate agents call a dream for families. My mom loved that yard. She walked it the first day like she was already hosting summer barbecues in her head. I remember her standing at the edge of the grass, hands on her hips, saying, "We can put a swing set over there, maybe a garden here." My dad just nodded and pretended he wasn't already thinking about the mortgage. To me, the yard felt wrong. I didn't have language for it then. It just felt heavy, like the air above the grass was thicker than the rest of the world. Like if you ran too far out there, you might not make it back. But I kept that to myself. Kids move because adults decide things, not because kids have a weird feeling. We spent the first day unpacking, boxes everywhere, the smell of fresh paint still hanging in the halls. By late afternoon, my parents were exhausted, the light was fading, and I got bored of being told, "Not that box, put that one in the other room." I wandered into the kitchen. The back wall was all glass, a big sliding door that looked straight into the yard. It was almost sunset, that strange time when everything is still bright but starting to lose its color. The grass looked grayish. The trees drooped in the distance like they were leaning in. On impulse, I unlocked the glass door and slid it open. The sound it made stuck with me, this long, scraping hiss that didn't quite match the motion. I stepped outside. The air felt colder than it had out front. That's when I saw her. She was standing near the middle of the yard, maybe 20 feet away. A girl about my age, maybe a little younger. Long, dark hair that fell in tangled waves. A white dress that looked like it had once been fancy but had been worn too many times and washed too few. Bare feet sunk into the grass. She wasn't doing anything, just staring at me. You know how people naturally shift their weight, scratch their nose, look around, blink? She didn't do any of that. She was perfectly still. Her arms hung at her sides. Her head was tilted just slightly, like she hadn't quite figured out how to hold it up. For a second, I thought maybe one of the neighbor's kids had snuck over. Hi?" I said. The word sounded too loud in the empty yard. She didn't answer, didn't move. Something about her felt wrong in a way I couldn't explain, like she'd been standing there for a very long time, waiting for exactly this moment. "Mom?" I called over my shoulder, still watching the girl. "There's someone." I turned my head for half a second just to see if my mom was coming. When I looked back, the girl was gone. Not walking away, not running, gone. The yard was empty. No sound, no rustling bushes, nothing. I slammed the glass door shut so hard it rattled. My mom came in from the hallway, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "What's wrong?" "There was a girl," I said, "in the backyard. She was just standing there." My mom moved to the glass and peered out. "I don't see anybody." "She was there a second ago," I insisted. "In the middle, in a white dress." My mom's face did a funny thing in that moment. For half a second, her expression went from mild concern to something else, something much more serious. Then, she smoothed it away. "It's probably a neighbor," she said. "Kids wander. I'll talk to whoever lives behind us tomorrow." She locked the sliding door. "For tonight, let's leave this closed, okay?" I nodded, but as we walked away, I glanced back at the glass. My reflection was there. The kitchen, the empty yard. Still, I felt like something was looking at me from just beyond what I could see. The second time I saw the girl, I knew I wasn't imagining her. It was 3 days later, after dinner. My dad was in the basement putting together shelves, swearing under his breath, and my mom was washing dishes. I was drying them and stacking them on the counter like a reluctant assistant. The sink was under a small window that faced the side of the yard. My mom kept glancing outside, but not in a casual way, more like she was checking something. "Did you talk to the neighbors?" I asked. "What neighbors?" she said too quickly. "About the girl," I said. "The one in the backyard?" My mom stopped scrubbing a pan. For a heartbeat, the only sound was the running water. "I haven't seen any kids around," she said finally. "You probably saw your reflection, or a shadow." I wanted to argue, but something in her tone told me not to. Later that evening, I was in the living room, half watching some cartoon, half watching the glass door. It was getting dark. The yard turned into a rectangle of taller blackness outside the lit room. I don't remember deciding to do it. One second I was on the couch, the next I was standing at the door with my nose almost touching the glass. There she was, same place as before, same white dress, same unnatural stillness. It was darker now, but I could see her clearly, like she was lit from somewhere I couldn't see. My heart was pounding so hard I felt it in my throat. I don't know what possessed me, but I opened the door. The cold hit me first. It was at least 10 degrees colder outside than in. The hairs on my arms rose instantly. "Who are you?" I asked. The girl didn't reply. "Do you live around here?" Nothing. I took one step out onto the patio. I was now fully outside while she remained dead center in the yard. The distance between us felt smaller than before, even though it probably wasn't. "What do you want?" I said. Her head moved. It was a tiny motion, but it felt like the world tilted when she did it. She looked up, just a fraction, like the question had reached her from far away. Then slowly, she raised her right arm. For a second, I thought she was going to wave. That would have been normal. Human. Instead, she extended her arm straight, her finger rigid and pointed. Not at me, at the second floor of the house, at my bedroom window. My knees went weak. I stumbled backward into the kitchen doorframe. My mom appeared out of nowhere, grabbing my shoulders. "What are you doing out here?" "There's a girl," I said, voice shaking. "She's right there." By the time my mom looked, the yard was empty again. This time, she didn't tell me it was my imagination. She locked the sliding door with shaking hands, then pulled the blind down so hard it snapped. "We don't go outside after dark," she said quietly. "Not here." "Who is she?" I asked. My mom didn't answer. Later that night, she dragged my dresser across my bedroom floor and shoved it hard up against the door. "Why are you doing that?" I asked. "So it doesn't open easily," she said. "So what doesn't open easily?" "That's not a helpful question," she snapped. She made me sleep in her bed that night, the next night, and the next. When I asked how long this would go on, she said, "Until I feel better about it." It would be years before I understood that what she meant was, until I feel like she's not looking at you anymore. Despite the fear, you'd be amazed what kids can get used to. After a few weeks, the dresser against my door and the blinds always drawn became normal. The panic thinned into a background hum. I stopped checking the yard every 5 minutes. I even convinced myself I might not see the girl again if I just didn't look. Life went on. I went to school, made a friend named Ellie, did homework, watched TV. My parents fought more than they used to, but they always did that when money was tight. We didn't talk about the girl. It was like we'd agreed. No backyard after dark, no talking about why. Of course, kids aren't great at following rules they don't understand. It was a Saturday afternoon when Ellie came over for the first time. We had pizza, played video games, and acted like children in any other house in any other suburb. At some point, Ellie wandered into the kitchen. "Wow, your yard is huge," she said. "Why do you keep this blind down?" I was in the middle of saying, "We just do," when she reached for the cord and yanked it open. Sunlight flooded the room. The yard looked deceptively harmless in daylight. The grass was too long, sure, and the trees at the far edge still leaned in a weird way, but there were no ghosts, no girls, nothing. "Can we go out there?" Ellie asked. "No," I said too fast. "Why not?" "We're not supposed to." She rolled her eyes. "My parents say that too, but I still go out. Come on." She slid the door lock without asking and stepped onto the patio. My heart jackhammered. "Ellie, don't." She turned and smirked. "What? Is your backyard haunted?" she teased. I didn't answer. She walked a few steps into the yard, spinning around with her arms out like a dorky movie kid. "Look at all this space. You could have epic water balloon fights out here." She stopped. It was like someone pressed pause on her. Her head snapped toward the far side of the yard, toward the shadow line where the grass met the start of the trees. Her face changed, just drained. I didn't want to look. Every cell in my body told me not to look, but I did. The girl in white was standing at the edge of the shade, half in light, half out. It was the first time I'd seen her anywhere but the middle of the yard. She seemed taller somehow, or maybe closer. She wasn't looking at me this time. She was looking at Ellie. "Do you see her?" I whispered. Ellie's voice came out thin. "Who is that?" The girl tilted her head in that slow, unnatural way. Her hair shifted, and for the first time I could almost see her face. Her eyes were too dark. Not black, not exactly, but deeper than eyes should be. Ellie took a step back. I don't like this." The girl's arm started to rise. Not toward my window this time, toward Ellie. "Inside," I said. My voice shook. "Now." Ellie didn't argue. She backed toward the patio until she bumped into me, and we stumbled inside together. I slammed the door, locked it, dropped the blind, and dragged one of the kitchen chairs in front of it without thinking. "Seriously, who was that?" Ellie gasped. I wanted to say a neighbor. I wanted to say a prank. Instead, I said nothing. I could feel something on the other side of the glass, watching, waiting. Ellie never came back to my house after that. She didn't say why. She didn't need to. Kids know when something is wrong, even if adults pretend nothing is. We moved out 6 months later. Officially, it was because my dad got a job in another town and we needed to downsize. Unofficially, my mom had started jumping at every noise after dark and sleeping with the TV on. The last month we were there, she nailed the bedroom windows shut. "Can they not lock?" my dad asked. "I don't trust locks," she said. I didn't understand then that she meant she didn't trust whatever was on the other side. The last night in the house, I woke up around 3 a.m. to a sound I'll never forget. A steady, deliberate tapping. It wasn't loud, it was worse, it was patient. Tap, tap, tap. I knew exactly where it was coming from, the window. I lay there, frozen, staring at the ceiling, counting the taps. They came in groups of 3. Tap, tap, tap. Pause. Tap, tap, tap. My mom was breathing heavily beside me, clearly awake, clearly also pretending to be asleep. "Mama," I whispered. "I know," she whispered back. Neither of us moved. The tapping went on for what felt like hours. When the first hint of dawn finally bled into the room, it stopped. We left that day. My mom did one last walkthrough of the house, room by room, checking every closet, every corner. When she got to what had been my bedroom, she stopped in the doorway for a long time. "You stay here," she said. I didn't. I stood behind her as she looked around the empty room. The dresser marks were still on the floorboards. The nail holes around the window frame looked like tiny wounds. The window glass was smudged, like someone had leaned their forehead against it. over and over. My mom closed her eyes for a moment, then whispered, "Not again," and turned away. We never talked about the house after that. We pretended it was just one more place we'd lived. We pretended there'd been no girl, no tapping, no pointing. But pretending doesn't make things go away, it just delays them. Years went by. I grew up, moved out, went to college, then to a tiny city apartment with windows that faced a brick wall. That was not an accident. I told myself it was cheap, but if I was honest, I liked not being able to see out. And more importantly, not having to wonder if someone was looking in. I learned to sleep with the curtains closed. I told partners I just liked it dark. I avoided houses with big yards. If someone suggested a cabin in the woods for a trip, I always had an excuse. My mom never quite recovered. She became one of those people who double-checked every window lock twice before bed, who hung wind chimes for the sound. But really, I think, so she'd know if something moved the air outside. She refused ground floor rooms at hotels. She had a nervous breakdown when a realtor friend innocently suggested she consider a nice place with a big backyard. I didn't understand the extent of it until she called me, years later, her voice thin and shaking. "I found something," she said. "I think it's time you knew." I drove over that night. She was waiting for me at the kitchen table with a wooden box. "You remember that girl you used to say you saw?" She asked without preamble. "Yes," I said. My throat felt dry. She slid the box toward me. "She's been there a long time." Inside were photos, old, curling-edge Polaroids, some discolored with age. They were all of the same yard, our yard, some from different angles, some clearly taken by different cameras, different decades. In every single one, the girl was there, sometimes standing near the house, sometimes at the edge of the woods, sometimes half hidden behind a tree, but always there, always watching. My stomach turned. "Where did you get these?" "From the previous owners," my mom said. "They left them in the attic. I found them when I was pregnant with you. I kept them because I needed to remind myself I wasn't crazy." "You saw her too," I said quietly. "Before you were born," she replied. "The first night we slept there, she was standing in the yard when I woke up. The second night, she was closer. The third night, she was at the window." "Did Dad see her?" I asked. "He refused to look," she said. "He always refused to look. Easier that way, I guess." She took a deep breath. "The people who owned the house before us, they had a daughter, around your age when we moved in. She disappeared." "Disappeared how?" I whispered. "Backyard," my mom said. "Last seen playing out there alone. They never found her. The police decided she'd wandered into the woods and gotten lost." "Did they ever find?" I couldn't finish the sentence. "No," my mom said. "They just sold the house and left." Silence hung between us. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked. "Because I thought if we ignored it, she'd lose interest," my mom said. "I thought if we locked the doors and blocked the windows, she'd stop pointing." "Pointing at what?" I pressed. My mom's eyes met mine, and for the first time I saw raw fear there, not the diluted version she'd let me see as a kid. "She doesn't just watch children," my mom said. "She chooses them." A chill crawled up my spine. "Chooses them for what?" My mom looked away. I didn't stick around to find out. We sat in silence for a long time, staring at the photos. In the last one, the girl stood directly under my bedroom window, her face tilted up, her arm raised like she was midpoint. There was something horribly familiar about the shape of that window, about the faint outline of a dresser pressed against the door inside. "This was taken before we even lived there," I said. My mom nodded. She was pointing at a room that didn't belong to anyone yet. Pointing at me before I was even born, I realized. "I think so," my mom whispered. That was the last real conversation we had. 2 weeks later, she died in her sleep. The coroner called it natural causes. I called it too many years of being afraid. Her voice, when I replay it in my head, is always saying the same thing. Don't go back to that house. So of course, that's exactly what I did. Grief does something strange to your sense of self-preservation. I told myself I was going for closure, to prove to myself that the house was just wood and drywall and overgrown grass, that whatever we'd seen was just one long shared delusion. I didn't entirely believe that, but it sounded noble enough to justify the drive. The house was easy to find. They'd never torn it down. It sat at the end of the same cul-de-sac, but the neat lawns had given way to cracked driveways and patchy grass. Our old house looked worse than the rest. The for sale sign was long gone. The windows were dark. One was broken, the paint peeled in strips. The yard that once seemed too big now looked like a mouth that had forgotten how to close. The gate to the backyard creaked when I pushed it open. The grass was taller than I remembered, some of it waist-high. The air had that heavy feeling again, that sense that each step was a choice the world was waiting to judge. The center of the yard, that spot where she always stood, was flattened, as if someone had been standing there for a long time. I walked toward it against every instinct I had. When I stood in the exact spot I remembered her occupying, a wave of nausea hit me. I turned toward the house. My old bedroom window stared back. The glass was dirty, streaked, but intact. Behind it, I could almost see the outline of the room. My room. I don't know how long I stood there, just staring. Eventually, I forced myself inside. The back door gave under my hand with a reluctant groan. The kitchen smelled like rot and dust and something else, something metallic, like old blood. The blinds were still there, though half ripped. The sliding door track was caked with dirt, but I recognized the way it hissed when it moved. I walked down the hallway, past the bathroom, past the tiny linen closet, to the door that had once had a dresser shoved up against it. My bedroom door. It was half open now, hanging crooked on one hinge. I pushed it with one finger. The room was smaller than I remembered. Empty. Floorboards stained, wallpaper peeling in strips. The nail holes around the window frame were still visible. The glass had faint smudges on the inside, like someone had pressed their palms there a long time ago. I stepped inside. The air felt different in that room. Heavier. Sound felt muffled, like someone had wrapped the walls in cotton. I moved to the window, my shoes crunching on something. I looked down. Scratches. Deep grooves in the wood floor, like something heavy had been dragged across it again and again. A dresser. My dresser. Standing at that window, in that empty room, I felt a strange double vision. I could almost see my childhood self lying in the bed that used to be against that far wall, the nightlight glowing weakly, the door blocked. I could almost hear the tapping. As if summoned by the memory, a sound broke the thick silence. Tap. I froze. It came again. Tap, tap. Not behind me. Not on the door. On the window. I stared straight ahead, heart slamming so hard I thought I might pass out. I didn't want to turn my head. The smudges on the glass seemed to grow darker. Tap, tap. The sound was gentle, almost polite, like a guest asking to be let in. Go away. I whispered. Another tap, slightly louder. Very slowly, because some part of me needed to know, I lifted my eyes to the yard outside. She was there, standing in the grass, facing me. The white dress was grayer now, stained at the hem. Her hair moved slightly in a breeze I couldn't feel. This was the closest I'd ever seen her from the inside. Our eyes met. They were wrong. Too deep, too still. I realized something then. She wasn't standing on the ground like a normal person. She was exactly aligned with the spot she'd always appeared in. Like she was attached to it, like the yard was wearing her. Her arm began to lift. It was slow, jerky, like a puppeteer pulling strings. My breath hitched. She raised her hand to shoulder height, then slowly extended her finger. But she wasn't pointing at my window. She was pointing to my right, at something behind me. Every nerve in my body screamed, do not turn around. The room felt colder. I could see my own breath fogging in front of me, but not on the glass. Like the cold was inside, not out. I heard it then. Breathing. Not mine. Not human. Shallow and wet and too close. A voice came with it, so close to my ear I felt the air move. You came back. It wasn't a child's voice. It sounded layered, like more than one person speaking at once, through a mouth that hadn't used words in a very long time. I don't remember deciding to run. 1 second I was standing at the window, the next I was sprinting down the hall, out the door, across the yard, almost tripping over the uneven ground. I didn't look back. I didn't stop until I was in my car with the doors locked and my hands shaking on the wheel. I drove away without breathing. In the rearview mirror, the house shrank, then vanished. I told myself I imagined the figure in the upstairs window as I turned the corner. I told myself that a lot of things could explain breathing in an empty room. I told myself a lot of things. None of them helped when I saw the news 3 days later. House fire at local property. No injuries reported. A small article buried under bigger headlines. An old house at the end of a cul-de-sac had burned down overnight. No one was living there. The cause was listed as electrical. The picture attached to the article showed the charred remains of my childhood home. The yard was black. The windows were gone. Part of me felt relief, like something had finally been erased. That feeling lasted exactly 3 days, until the envelope arrived. No return address, just my name, handwritten, and my current address. The handwriting looked familiar in a way I couldn't place. I opened it at the kitchen counter. Inside was a Polaroid, a new one. Not yellowed, not faded. It showed the remains of the house. Ashes, rubble, the skeleton of the foundation. Same angle as the newspaper photo, but closer. And in the center of the frame, standing in the rubble where the backyard used to be, was the girl in white. Not gray anymore. White. Her hair fell away from her face for the first time. I saw her clearly. She looked older and younger at the same time, like age didn't quite work on her the way it did on us. Her eyes were looking straight at the camera, straight at me. Her arm was outstretched, finger pointing forward, at whoever was holding the camera, at whoever opened the envelope, at me. On the bottom border of the Polaroid, in the same shaky handwriting from the envelope, someone had written, "You never should have turned around." I checked the postmark. It was stamped from the town where the house had stood, dated the night before the fire, the night after I'd been there. I live in a high-rise now, 15th floor, no backyard, no trees. I keep my curtains closed at night and try not to think about houses or windows or girls in white dresses. Most nights it works, but every once in a while, when I'm lying in bed and the city sounds go quiet for just a second, I hear something I can't explain. Tap, 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 soft, patient, not on the door, not on the wall, on the glass. I won't look, because I finally understand what my mom meant. The house was never what was haunted. She doesn't just watch children, she chooses them, and she's very, very patient.